Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the January 29, 2019 meeting, and I'd recognize a motion to that effect. Moved and seconded. We'll vote. Approved. Next, we have the consent docket. Quite a few items. Are there any items that need to be discussed? If not, I'd recognize a motion to approve them, subject to individual consideration. Okay. Been moved and seconded. Any items for individual consideration? Seeing none, we'll vote. Approved. We do not have any items on the concurrence docket, so we'll move to the emergency construction contracts by resolution. There's a resolution ratifying the actions of the general manager and declaring an emergency, approving bid documents and awarding contract to Urban Contractors LLC, which is project SC 1069. Sanitary sewer emergency, Northwest 10th Street to Reno Avenue from Portland Avenue to Meridian Avenue, $128,000. Ratifying issuance of an emergency work order and approving contract and bonds. Is there a motion to approve this? Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll vote. Approved. We have a couple items for individual consideration. First one is a presentation on the Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant improvements, and the plans and specs to be advertised for bids at project ST 0139, Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant improvements.
Mr. Chairman, Nathan Maddenwall from our engineering department is here to give you a presentation.
Thank you, Chairman and Trustees. So this is just a brief presentation for the Deer Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant, project ST 139. This one's very similar to the one we had on the last docket, where it's just items that need to be upgraded because the plant's 40 years old and needs some improvements. So. Can you click me? So briefly, we'll just do a quick background, go over the proposed improvements that are within this project, talk about the details of the project, who the engineer is, construction cost, and then also the construction schedule. So real quick, here's an overlook of the wastewater system, same one we looked at on the previous presentation. The plant we're looking at is on the north side. The area shown kind of in pinkish, magenta-ish, so if you'll click once real quick. So the wastewater treatment plant that this project is the Deer Creek one there on the northwest side, so circled in red. So we're doing several items on this. One that we're doing is we're upgrading the main pump station, which wastewater flows into the wastewater treatment plant. We have to pump it up so that way it can gravity flow through the plant. So we have several pumps that are there. Some of them are fairly old, and we need to have valves in place to make sure we can isolate them and do work on the pumps and isolate flow from them so our guys can safely maintain them. So we'll be doing work there. Then we'll be doing grit facility improvements similar to the Chisholm Creek plant. We're trying to take the non-biological material out of the wastewater so that way we can have it settle out and it doesn't damage our pumps further downstream. So. And then we'll also be doing work on the non-potable water system. That's water that's treated and then pumped around the plant for our guys to use for maintenance, for washing stuff down and cleaning. Not that we're discharging it, but just stuff we're using for our maintenance processes. So the engineer on this project is CP&Y. The estimated construction cost is just under $9.2 million. We're going to be opening bids March 13th. Estimated contract award will be the first docket in April 12th. Start of construction will be shortly thereafter. It'll be we have 330 calendar days for this project, so about a year for construction. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you. I would recognize a motion to approve this item for individual consideration. Second? Second. Moved and seconded. We'll vote. Approved. Second item for individual consideration is to ratify and approve addendum number 1, correcting the bid opening time and joint resolution with the City of Oklahoma City awarding the contract to Sherwood Construction Company, Inc., Project WT-0220 revised, Hefter Water Treatment Plant Lagoon Closure and Land Restoration, $11,940,000, approving contract and bonds, and authorizing execution of contract and bonds upon receipt from the contractor.
Mr. Chairman, this project was bid, if you recall, we received bids last month, and we recommended that we reject the bids because each bidder had exceptions to the contract time. So we rebid the project, and we actually modified the lagoon closure schedule, where we're closing the large lagoon first, and it will be closed by the end of August, and then the two smaller lagoons on the south side of the property will be closed by the end of December. With that change in schedule, we rebid the project and actually saved $500,000. And so we do have a responsive bidder, and we're making the recommendation accordingly.
Is there a motion to approve? It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll vote. Approved. Are there any items from trustees? General Manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a couple of items here. First, a presentation on financial plan and capital improvement plan. So Vanessa Aguilar and Nathan Maddenwall will give you a short presentation on each.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Trustees. Vanessa Aguilar with Utilities Department, and I'll be starting with the financial plan update of the presentation. Go to the next slide, please. So a quick overview on the financial management. It's one of our core business initiatives, and we strive to maintain our strong financial management through our long-term financial planning. We maintain 5-year, 10-year, and 30-year pro formas. A few of the key metrics that we manage throughout our pro formas is we make sure we have 90-day working capital. We also make sure we have at least 2 times debt service coverage, 1 time fixed coverage ratio, and a debt-to-pay-go ratio of 60 to 40%. We also want to maintain our cash reserve balances, make sure those are in adequate standing. All of these components have helped us maintain our AAA credit rating by both Standard & Poor's and Moody's. As we go on to the next slide, we'll take a look at the 5-year financial plan for our water utility. We take a look at our revenues, and our main source of revenues is our service charges, and we can see total revenues are increasing about $51 million over the 5-year period, going from $171 to over $222 million. And our expenses, those are composed of our city operations, our trust operations, as well as other miscellaneous expenses through McGee Creek and non-ratepayer activities. Our expenses for the 5-year period are growing from about $80 million to $91 million. Our debt service in the 5-year period is almost doubling, as well as tripling in the 10-year period. This is due largely to our large capital program in the 5-year period as we're undergoing the Atoka construction projects. You can see at the bottom of the screen there, we are maintaining our revenue bond debt service coverage at a minimum of 2 times or better, and our 1 times fixed coverage ratio. On the next slide, we'll see our 5-year plan for the wastewater utility, and we see here that our revenues are mostly composed of those service charges and other miscellaneous revenues, and our revenues are increasing about $25 million in the 5-year period, going from about $105 to $130 million in the 5-year. Our expenses, mostly city operations, the trust operations, as well as our contracted wastewater operator expenses, and those are increasing about $10 million in the 5-year period. Similar to the water side, we're seeing our wastewater debt service double in the 5-year period, increasing about $14 million, and is also expected to triple by the end of the 10-year period. You can see at the bottom of the screen, we're maintaining our bond coverage at a minimum of 2 times. We do see our fixed coverage ratio dip a little bit in 2022, but continues to go up through the end of the 5-year period. And combined water and wastewater, our coverage ratio is well above 1 times coverage. On the next slide, we'll see a breakdown of our funding strategy for our capital plan. We have about $1.5 billion in capital projects that we are awarding in the next 5 years. We have updated our funding strategy, which is composed primarily of our cash sources and our debt sources. So our debt sources include SRF, which we've updated to include $10 million in funding for water projects and up to $50 million for our wastewater projects. And this may go up or down in any given year as the Water Board has capacity for projects depending on the needs statewide. And the remainder of our debt-funded projects will be through commercial paper. So as you can see on the bar chart on the left side, we have in blue our water projects and in green our wastewater projects. So in blue, we're seeing over in the 5-year period, we have about $328 million funded with cash. About $98 million will be funded with SRF loans, and the remainder, about $695 million, funded with commercial paper for our water projects. On wastewater, we have our cash sources, which is $237 million, and SRF loans to fund on the debt side, which is about $191 million. On the right side, we have 2 pie charts to show the debt-to-pay-go funding ratio. On water, we are seeing a 71 to 29% ratio, a little heavy on the debt as we're funding the Atoka pipeline construction in the 5-year window. On the wastewater, we have a 45-55 debt-to-pay-go. We're seeing a little more cash funding on wastewater as we're funding the South Canadian plant in FY 2020 with our cash funds. We continue to monitor our financial plans and update them as we get project bids, actual awards, and as we get updates to our schedule of awards for projects. And we are also working with our financial advisor to update the timing and the sizing of our letter of credit adjustments through our commercial paper program, and we'll be back to bring a presentation to the trust on those recommendations and findings. And so with this, I'll hand it over to Nathan for the capital plan update.
Thank you, Vanessa.
So if we look at the water and wastewater capital improvements that we're going to be doing for the 5 years and specifically for the this fiscal year. So our key water projects kind of remain the same from the last time we presented on the quarterly update, doing water supply improvements, interconnecting the Hefner and Draper service areas, water treatment plant upgrades, main replacements, and booster station improvements. So this slide here on the left is showing the amount of proposed capital funding for the water system by fiscal year. On the right, we show how that breaks down by quarter, and we have shown in orange there what we came to guys when we presented our last quarterly update, and then the blue shows what we're projecting now for that. So you see we had to move a project or two out of the second quarter into the third quarter, and then the fourth quarter we see a little bit of dip there just because of the second phase of the Atoka pipeline, since that's included in here. Some of the pipe purchase order that we'll do for that we think will shift out to the next fiscal year. So how does that look around town? So what you see on the map now is showing the areas of replacement that we're going to be doing. The items in red shown on the map is what we're going to be doing in the fourth quarter. The areas in yellow are what we're doing third quarter. So we were a little bit resource limited. We have a lot of engineers on board to help us expedite designs so we can hit those fourth quarter deadlines, make sure we stagger bids so that we don't overload the contractor. So we have quite a bit of work on the replacement side. Then we are also facility improvements. We don't really have any more for the remainder of this fiscal year. We're doing improvements at Booster Station 8. We awarded that in the second quarter, and then we're also doing clear well upgrades at the Draper water treatment plant. Next slide. For the interconnect, the black line shows previous projects that we've done, the solid black line. The dashed black line are transmission mains that we have in construction from previous fiscal year. The area shown in white is ones that we awarded this first quarter of the fiscal year, and the areas in red are what we still have left to do. So we're working with our consultants to finish up designs, easement acquisition, so we can get those projects out to bid. We plan to do that this fourth quarter. Onto the wastewater side. We're working to do treatment plant upgrades. We have 2 treatment plant projects out to bid currently. Asset management program has begun. We're finishing up our working on relief mains in order to comply with our consent order, main replacements, and then also upgrades to our lift stations. So if we look at the wastewater side, again, on the left is showing how much funding for the wastewater system by fiscal year, and then on the right, showing the same thing, showing what we had projected and where we're at now. So second quarter, we see a little bit of dip from there. We didn't have a whole lot of funding allocated that. We actually, the condition assessment moved to the third quarter, so it's still planned work that we were doing. It just shifted a little bit. And then in the third and fourth quarter, why we see the change there, the treatment plant upgrade that we have on this docket will probably get awarded in April, won't make it in that third quarter like we had thought. And then we also have our relief main that we had to realign while we were working with parks to make sure they had a more beneficial use of the park. So we've been working with them. We have that figured out in the consultants moving forward. So we plan to do that fourth quarter. Go ahead to the next one. So what that looks like on the map. Go ahead. So facility-wise, the two plants on the north side of town that we've talked about the past two dockets, and then the lift stations throughout town. We're awarding one contract on the west side of Draper for sewer facility improvements, and then we have 5 that we'll be doing replacements on, and then another one down there at the Draper water treatment plant. Go ahead, next one. Relief mains, we have 2 projects in construction. Fast. We had 2 projects in construction. Can you go back to that? Okay. So we had 2 projects in construction over there on the south side of town. And then we have one more that we're looking to bid. That's one that will be in the fourth quarter. The replacements you can see throughout town. Again, we were a little resource limited on replacements, but we have engineers under contract that we're expediting design. We're going to get those out in the fourth quarter. And then the condition assessment. We're working primarily in the purple area now on the map, but you can see we have multiple basins that we'll be working in throughout town over the program. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the projects.
What was on the black lines? What was the wastewater relief plans? Is that just to relieve? I can't see very well.
Sorry about that. So those are projects that we do where we determine that we don't feel we have sufficient capacity. So we either upsize existing lines or we put in parallel lines to provide additional capacity or relieve.
And can you go back to that slide? So what are the locations on that black, where the black is?
I don't think my mouse works, though. You can see kind of in the heart of town. That's the project that we have over here. These projects are under construction, and we also have a project on the south side of town construction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Nathan. A couple more items, Mr. Chairman. First of all, we have a new surrogate member of the trust. Paul Johnson has been appointed as city manager surrogate member of the trust. Welcome aboard. Several of us went down to the Toka Spillway project Friday. It was really breezy standing on that dam Friday, and it was cold. But the project is coming along very well. We look like we're going to be on schedule. I believe it's to be completed by the end of the year. Is that right, Sam? November-ish? So that'll be a big relief. We won't have to worry about that anymore. In your packet, there was a status report. First of all the lakes are full. There were a couple of inches of being a little under or a little over. So we're in good shape. Even the Toka, we're trying to keep it pumped down, and we're not successful. It's almost full, too. It doesn't seem to be a problem right now. The contractor has that under control. But there was an item under wastewater treated that indicates that we pumped 3 billion gallons in January. That number I'm having researched. That might be a problem. It may not be correct. So I'll give you an update at the next meeting with that value once it's been evaluated. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? Any citizens to be heard? Seeing none, thank you for being here. We're adjourned.